Ayana Davis is a registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in oncology nutrition. She is the owner of Ayana Davis Nutrition, as well as one of the dietitians at the UCSF Health Cancer Center. She works closely with her clients throughout their cancer journey, from diagnosis to treatment and into survivorship, to provide individualized recommendations to help them optimize their nutrition based on personal needs. Ayana believes in focusing on a whole food, plant-centered approach to diet and supports her clients in a step-by-step manner to incorporate more of those foods into their diet. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ayana Davis.
Hi everyone, good morning, and thank you for joining me from my kitchen here in Berkeley, California. Today we'll be focusing on cooking 3 fun recipes to help you incorporate more plant protein foods into your diet. I picked some recipes. I wanted to have a breakfast recipe for you guys because I know that one is kind of difficult to switch out of animal proteins if you want to add more protein into your diet. And that will be our our tofu scramble. And then I also picked a dinner recipe, which is traditionally made with beef bolognese sauce, and we're going to make it with red lentils today. And we picked a snack, a really delicious, super easy snack, which we'll start with my cooking demo today. So I'm going to show you how to make these, and you guys, if you want, you can follow at home and cook with me, or just take a look and you have the recipe that you're getting with the program so you can cook them at home. They're all really simple and really delicious because I believe in cooking fast and not spending a lot of time in the kitchen, but also making really good food. So we're going to actually start with our chickpea snack. I actually used organic canned chickpeas, okay, for this recipe. The first thing you want to do when you open a can, so this is the can of chickpeas that I use, is you want to rinse the beans or chickpeas or any legumes that you're using. Rinse them off with water. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to dry them off. And then why chickpeas anyways? Why do we want to add them? So they're a great source of protein. They're also really high in fiber, right? And we're always aiming to add some more fiber into our diet. That has been shown to be protective against certain cancers. Beans and legumes also contain some phytonutrients in them. They're high in different minerals like iron and zinc. So if we're trying to add that into our diet, not only through meat, beans are really versatile and great for that. Okay, so I dried it, tap, dry off the water with a paper towel, okay? My oven is already preheated at 400. And I am going to add some olive oil. The recipe calls, this is 1 can of chickpeas for 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm not really going to measure here, but more or less kind of eye it out. I'm going to just mix it up good. And then we want to add some spices. So you can really use any spices you want. I always like a little bit of salt. That brings out flavor, right? So salt is wonderful. Maybe a little bit of pepper too. You can add paprika, you can add turmeric, cumin, all sorts of. I have some curry here for my other recipes, so I'm going to use curry for today. Really delicious. I'll talk about the benefits of curry a little later when we do the tofu scrambled. Okay, and we'll stick that one in the oven. We'll get started with that so it can just cook while we're doing the other recipes. Okay, so I'm going to put a timer for 25 minutes. So we don't forget about them and they burn in the oven. The next recipe we're going to go with, because that's going to take a little longer to cook, is our bolognese, our red lentil bolognese, okay? First thing I want to talk about a little bit is, these are red lentils, in case you don't know what they look like. They become really clear when you cook them, Okay, so they sort of blend into whatever dish, so they can be used really as a nice thickener in soups too. If you're making like a veggie soup, nice way to add more veggie protein in there, but also kind of thicken up the soup a little bit. They don't need to be, you don't need to soak them before cooking them. So something like if you didn't think about, planning in advance, they can be used always. The first thing I like to do when I cook lentils or beans, if you use dried, you want to look through and just make sure there are no debris in there that was collected, any rocks or anything, you want to take them out. And then the next thing you do is, of course, rinse them out, okay? Just to clean them out. All right, so we're going to start the recipe. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up my pan, my pot. Okay, I have it over kind of medium-high right now, just to warm it up. I want to heat it up before I add the oil, okay? So I'm going to use extra virgin olive oil, which I really like using in my cooking. You want your pan or your pot to be really hot before you put it in. This way it doesn't burn the oil. So it's a nice way to start. So I'm just going to wait a minute. I already cut up my onion, my carrot, and my celery. So that is traditionally used in bolognese as a base, and so many other recipes. We want to have in terms of the portions, we want to have about a half, so 2-to-1 ratio with the carrot, celery, and onion. So this is half an onion, then you have about a quarter celery, a quarter carrot. So probably about one stalk of celery, one medium carrot that you chop in there. Okay, so I'm going to add about a quarter cup of olive oil. You basically want to coat the pan. If you're trying to follow more of a low-fat diet, you can also just use some water here and saute your veggies in the water. So I'm going to put that in. Your alliums, your onion and garlic, really great anti-inflammatory, have some cancer-fighting properties. Your carrots, right? Orange or bright orange colored. What do we think about? Beta-carotene, precursor for vitamin A, also another antioxidant. We want to include those, especially carrots or other orange colored vegetables every day in our diet. Those are really good. I'm going to add a little bit of sea salt in. Okay. At every step of my cooking, I want to add a little bit of salt. Okay. Salt brings out flavor. So you want to add it during the cooking. Okay. Unless you're, of course, have any medical reason to follow a low salt diet and your doctor told you to do that, that's a different story. But if not, generally speaking, a little salt at every step of your cooking is going to continue bringing out those flavors from the food. So it's really nice to do that. In the meantime, while I'm letting these saute for about 6 minutes, so we have some time to wait, I want to show you what to do with your garlics, okay? So we need 4 cloves of garlic. Easy way to peel your garlic. Just take your knife and tap, tap, tap. And your garlic is peeled super easy, so you don't have to mess with it, right? Another one. Now with our garlics, in order for us to get all the benefits from the garlic when you're eating them cooked, you want to actually cut them in advance, or just, when I tap them, I opened it up, right? So the garlic is a little bit broken, opened up. That releases those anti-inflammatory properties that your garlic has. So really nice ways to just in advance, while this is cooking, I have time to wait. I chopped up the garlic. I let those compounds release from the garlic. Okay, and I chop it up really small. So mince the garlic. Okay. that ready. And I'm gonna check on my, looks really nice, starting to smell good in the kitchen. As we're cooking this. All right, so now I'm gonna add, and wait another minute, let those compounds release, but for the purposes of time, I'm gonna add my garlic now. And let it cook for another minute with the garlic. You don't want to burn the garlic. I'm going to lower the heat to about medium right now. Okay, beautiful. And now I'm going to add my oregano and red pepper flakes. The red pepper flakes, it's going to give it a little bit of heat, okay? So if you are having any sensitivity in your mouth, or you have any reflux, anything like that, you probably want to, or if you're going to feed your kids the meal, which you can, it's delicious. I would take out the red pepper flakes. I tested it either way, they both taste really good. Oregano is an herb, again, has anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory properties. All of your herbs and spices are really great, not only for flavor, but also to add in those cancer-fighting nutrients. So really always trying to add. Dried herbs are great too. You want to try to have them, less than 6 months old. So if you keep them in the pantry for too long, they're going to lose some of that benefit. Same with your spices. So trying to, even if you're not using a lot of them, you just buying in smaller quantities. Also keeping them not in a place where they're going to heat up too much and not right above your stove top. That's going to ruin them. So you want to make sure. So we added that in. I'm going to add a little more salt. Right? That's the next step here. Bring out those flavors like that. Okay. And now we're going to sear in our lentils. Mix them in. I'm going to add 3 cups of vegetable broth. Okay. You can buy any vegetable broth from the store. I usually get a low salt one and then add my own salt. I prefer that. And then you can make your own. It's good to keep. You can keep some of those ends of food scraps in a bag and put that in the freezer and then cook that up and make your own stock. That's really nice too. So 3 cups of the broth. We're going to add a cup of tomato sauce. Again, you can buy any tomato sauce at the store. Try to have a minimal amount of ingredients in there. So it's mostly just the tomatoes. Tomatoes are really wonderful. They have lycopene in them. That's an antioxidant. Again, helps our body fight cancer. When you cook the tomatoes, when you add the oil into the tomatoes, that enhances the absorption of those antioxidants. So that's why I like to cook with a little bit of oil, especially heart-healthy extra virgin olive oil. Then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of the tomato paste. In here. And a little bit of balsamic vinegar. So balsamic vinegar, that's going to add some acid into your recipe, helps balance the flavors. When I looked at this recipe initially, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what it will taste like. Tastes great. So half of the balsamic goes in, so 1 tablespoon will go in now. We're going to mix that all in. And once it boils, we're going to reduce the heat to kind of low medium heat. Just let it simmer for about 30 minutes, okay? So I'm going to add, again, a tiny bit of salt. It's nice to go back to it every once in a while. Just check that the lentils didn't stick to the bottom. Now, I didn't mention, I'm using a silicone spoon. I like using them or wooden spoons, but those are really nice to kind of scrape anything. They don't ruin your pan. They, you know, if you're using any of the non-stick pans or pots, that's a great thing to have in your kitchen. Really highly recommend it. I love using that in my cooking. Okay, so we're gonna let that take care of itself, and we're gonna oh, another thing that I did get that I'm going to add at the end here is some fresh herbs. So if you do have access to fresh herbs, that's always really nice. They add great flavor. This is some oregano. Smells really great. This is some fresh basil. I'm going to chop those up also and add it into the recipe at the end to add extra yummy flavor. And also, again, those anti-inflammatory nutrients. So that's greens, right? You want to add them into your food every day. All right, so we're going to let these cook. And in the meantime, let's start talking about our next recipe, our breakfast, right? So we're going to make a curried scramble, tofu scramble. So I do want to kind of start by talking a little bit about tofu because I know it's sometimes controversial around breast cancer, especially. So I want to answer questions that some of you may have about even eating any soy product. So we do, you know, when we looked at early research with mice, with really, really high doses of some of those flavonoids in tofu, that research showed that they cause tumor growth, and that is where all the confusion came from. But that's, you know, since then there has been a lot more newer research that looked at soy and breast cancer especially. It is not, you know, it's been shown to definitely not be harmful to eat, even in countries in Asia where it's much more of a staple in the diet, where a lot of the research comes from, because it's, again, they eat a lot more than here in America. It hasn't been shown to be harmful to eat it, even with ER positive cancers, estrogen positive cancer. It hasn't been shown to be harmful to eat even 3 servings of tofu or soy products per day. And there seem to be some benefits, but, you know, not enough to say, oh, we have strong evidence for that. So the reason I like adding some tofu into the diet, it is a great source of a complete protein. Some whole soy products like edamame could be another great snack. It also is high in fiber. It does have some phytonutrients in it. So I think it's a great way to incorporate more plant protein, plant-based food in the diet. And you can sort of flavor it how you want and make it delicious. It's pretty bland otherwise. So that's my shtick about soy. And if you have any more questions, we can answer them at the end, of course. So let's start cooking this delicious recipe. And then this is a scramble that has veggies in it. You can pick and choose your veggies. This recipe calls for onion, red bell peppers, and arugula. Again, the onions, allium, really great. I'm going to start by heating my pan up. Again, I want to get it high enough. Right, before I put the oil in, or in this case, it calls for a tablespoon of broth. I'm actually going to use olive oil. You can use water, however you want to do it. We have our red bell peppers. Okay, red bell peppers, high in vitamin C, so a great way to add vitamin C. It's not just in oranges, a lot of other foods as well. So vitamin C, another antioxidant that you can add in. And we're going to use arugula. Arugula is from the cruciferous family. Okay. Cruciferous vegetables other cruciferous vegetables, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, bok choy, cabbage. Okay, these are some of them. Really great. That has sulforaphane in it, which is a phytonutrient that has been shown to act as a detoxifier of carcinogens. So really nice thing to have. I recommend for everyone to have a serving of cruciferous vegetables every day. So why not get it at breakfast? The other thing is we recommend to have 8 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day in your diet. So this is 3 servings, right? But you're getting about 1.5 servings of vegetables in your breakfast with this dish. So how nice is that? Starting our day off with some veggies. I'm just gonna check my bolognese again. I said I'm gonna stir it up a little bit. It's boiling here, so I lowered the heat. Just letting it simmer. Okay, and I think that one way to check if your pot is hot, okay, take a little bit of water. My sink is right here out of the camera. Okay, just put it on. If you see that it dries up really fast, your pan is hot. Okay, so a little bit more actually. Okay, I think I'm good. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil. Again, you can put a tablespoon of oil. You can put a tablespoon of broth. You can use water. But I like my extra virgin olive oil. Helps those nutrients absorb those all those antioxidants absorb better. They need some fat. Okay. So I'm going to throw in to start with my onion and pepper. I'm going to use a different, excuse me. Gonna mix them up, add a little bit of salt on top. I always like to start with that. Okay, so another thing I want to show you now while we're gonna let these cook on medium. Kind of until your onion becomes translucent, okay, clear. You don't want to burn the onion, but just see when it becomes clear in there. So give it time, have patience with your onion. You want to cook it up. It's going to add a lot of flavor to the food. Okay, so with our tofu, one thing you want to do with tofu, so I have it here hiding, okay? We want to press the water out of our tofu, okay? So the tofu comes in a block, in a package, in water. We want to get some of that water out. One, because it's going to make the dish less watery, but also it will absorb any of those spices and flavors that you're adding into it much better. So before we started, you want to use a pretty heavy pan on top of it, and you want to use a plate that has some rigor, so it's not going to spill. Okay, so I just 15-20 minutes at least you want to have that on. And you can see, I'm just going to pour some of that water here. Look how much water came out of there. So it was a little much bigger before. So so that's something you want to do before you start. While you're chopping your onion, before you start chopping your onion and pepper, put the tofu on the side and just press it to get that water out. Okay, so how are we looking? Okay, so other ingredients that I'm going to be using in this dish while we're waiting, we can talk about them. They're really wonderful. One is nutritional yeast, used a lot in plant-based vegan cooking, okay? Great thing about nutritional yeast, it adds cheesy flavor to the food and kind of umami, so more of a mouthfeel into your dish. So really nice thing to add, if you're not using cheese, right? You want to add a little cheesiness flavor. It's also the only plant-based source of vitamin B12. So another way to add some B12 into your diet by adding nutritional yeast. So I really like to use that. And if you start looking at more plant-based recipes, a lot of them will call for nutritional yeast. So you know what that is. And then we're using curry. When you're making a tofu scramble, you also want to think about the color of it, right? Tofu is kind of white. You don't want it, you want it to look like egg, because really, that's what you're trying to imitate here. So you want to try to use a yellow spice, either turmeric, or in this case, we're using curry. Curry is an Indian spice mix. It has turmeric in it. That's what gives it the yellow color. It also has black pepper in it, right? So adding that black pepper enhances the absorption of the curcumins that are in the turmeric by about 1,000 times. So that's a great anti-inflammatory food. It has a lot of research around it. We always recommend to add turmeric into your diet. And again, this is a mixture of different spices here. So in this case, we're using the curry. It's delicious. Okay. And look at give it a little stir, make sure it's not burning here. And I'm also gonna check out, that's great. Going back for a minute, sorry to confuse you, to our bolognese. I hope I'm not jumping too much. You want to make sure that you cook it down uncovered. I have the top here, but you want it uncovered because you want it to thicken up and cook down. So you want the liquid to cook down, which is why you're keeping it open here. Because if you had bolognese before, it's pretty thick. It's not a thin sauce, right? It's kind of chunky. Okay, so now I'm going to add, with your hands, just kind of break down the tofu into the dish. And then additionally, you can use the back, the wooden back of the spoon, and just smash it up a little more. Break it up really so it looks like little egg pieces. That's what you can envision. Okay. And now we're going to mix it up a little bit. And I'm going to add in the curry powder. So 1 teaspoon of curry powder. Okay. Get that in there. And 1 tablespoon, I'll clean this up for a second, of my nutritional yeast. And 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm hearing my timer, so our chickpeas are about to be ready. And we'll see how they came out. Put the salt in. I'm going to mix that in. I don't know how well you can see, but I'll get it closer to you, but it's really getting that color, right? That yellow color. Okay, so we make sure, we want to really mix it in evenly, the spices. So everything is really covered up. And I'm going to let it cook for 1 second while I take out the chickpeas from the oven. Okay, there are beautiful chickpeas. bring them up to you and show you. You see they're kind of crispy in the outside, a little bit brown, and they're going to be soft in the inside. So really delicious. You can keep that up to, you know, once you let it cool, you can keep it up to 2 days in an airtight container. Doesn't need to be refrigerated, but just a really nice, delicious snack. If you have an air fryer at home, I know that's really popular nowadays. You can also use the air fryer to cook the chickpeas. So another way, and comes out really delicious too. I tried that out once. I'm gonna put those on the side to cool off a little bit. Turn off my oven, and now I'm gonna add the arugula into the eggs. Sorry, the tofu scrambled. Okay, we're gonna mix that up. Mix that in there. Okay, you want it to get wilted, but not too much. So about a minute. You're gonna kind of stir it in there. And just really beautiful, colorful dish. Super yummy. Okay, so this is done, and you can take it off the heat. I want to give you one more kind of pro tip for plant-based cooking, especially when you're imitating eggs with tofu. Or other, you know, if you just want to get a sulfur type taste into your food, there's a salt called Indian black salt. Easy to, you know, in specialty spice shops, you'll find it. I happened to get it as a present one time, so I had it in my house, which is really cool. And if you smell it, it really smells sulfury, like eggs. So I'm going to just add a little bit of that to my eggs. Honestly, they taste really, really delicious without it. It's not something necessary to add, but I wanted you to have that as a tip. So remember Indian black salt. And actually, once it's grounded up like salt, it looks more pink. It's not really black. It's black when it's as a whole. So I'm going to throw some in there. Why not? But really, can tell you that it's not necessary, but it's something added. It does give that sulfury taste to your food. So these are done, and I'm going to show you what they look like from a close-up here. Voila. There we go. Yeah, really nice. Looks like eggs, doesn't it? But it tastes like it. It's delicious. Great way to start your day. Okay, so we have another minute until our next dish is ready. Our last dish is ready. That's why we kind of started with it, because it takes a little longer to cook. But it's coming along. In the meantime, while I'm going to chop my fresh herbs that I'm going to add to it, I want to talk about how to cook beans and lentils. Especially, you know, legumes that have to be soaked. So if you want to use any dried beans rather than canned beans, you want to always soak them overnight. So first of all, like I showed you in the beginning, you want to go over them, make sure there's no rocks in there, and then you got to put it in a bowl. Probably something like this bowl would be great. Okay, put a cup in there. Now remember, they're gonna get the water in and they're gonna puff up, and then when you cook them, they become about 3 times as much. So if you're putting a cup, it's about 3 cups of beans that you're going to be getting cooked after that. Okay, so you always want to soak them overnight first. And then you can, if you have a pressure cooker, you can use a pressure cooker. It's going to be much faster. But if you don't, I mean, I actually don't use a pressure cooker. At my house, you just fill up the pot with a lot of water, right? Because it's going to take them probably about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour to cook. even after soaking them for at least 8 hours overnight. In order to reduce some of the gassiness, okay, kind of help break down those compounds in beans that cause gas, because some people just are sensitive to that. You can put some seaweed, kombu seaweed in there while you're cooking it. It's also really nice to add some bay leaf in there, a little bit of olive oil, maybe some dried peppercorns while you're cooking them. Will give it some extra flavor. You never want to use salt when you're cooking your beans from dry, because that's going to harden the shell of the beans. So I don't recommend to use, so you add the salt later when you're cooking. It's something that is really nice to have around, a pot of beans for the week. You can throw them in a salad. You can throw them, make a little taco, breakfast taco too, with some beans in it. You can make a bean soup. It's getting cold outside, so just some tips on how to add more beans into your diet. So I'm going to chop up my fresh herbs, and we're about to finish here. Getting to the Q&A session. We have a few more minutes. So let's finish up our bolognese sauce. The last thing you're going to do is you're going to add another tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. I'm going to clean the nutritional yeast off here. And we're going to let it cook 2-3 more minutes with that. I'm also going to just throw in the fresh herbs now. Now, other tips about the bolognese, if you want to add, so the lentils, they're kind of chewy, but they're not like, maybe they don't have the same umami flavor that you get from meat, right? So if you want to add a little more chewiness in there, I like adding mushrooms in. So maybe like chopping up really small, a couple of mushrooms and adding that into your recipe. You can also add a product called seitan, which is wheat gluten, and that is used a lot as a meat replacement, and you can ground it up. Even tofu would probably work if you're going to ground it up. And then what are you going to serve it with? So different types of pastas, right? I always recommend whole grain or whole wheat. There's so many different fun options out there, but either whole wheat pasta if you want to just keep it normal. You can also use, there's a chickpea pasta, which is interesting, but remember that's going to add a lot more fiber in, so just might be a little hard on the digestive system to have all that fiber in your dish. And then you can also add, you can also roast a spaghetti squash and use that. That's kind of fun. And it's going to add, again, it's orange. It's going to add some more of that, those antioxidants, more fiber. And then, or zucchini zoodles. There's lots of fun options. And actually, this dish works really well with rice. So I had it when I was recipe testing a few times. I had leftovers and I had some brown rice in the fridge. Cooked it up for lunch with brown rice. Delicious. So it doesn't have to be as a pasta sauce, you know. It can be used as in other ways. Okay, so I just turned it off. I'm going to show you what we have here up close. Maybe I'll actually serve it in a little bowl. Yummy. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this well, and this is kind of what it looks like, a little thick bolognese sauce. Okay, so I think we're just about ready to go into into questions. I'm ready to eat. I got hungry cooking this, and it's almost lunchtime. So Carly, are you ready? Do you have any questions there for me?
Hi, Ayana. We do have some questions.
Great, wonderful.
Thank you so much for the great presentation. I'm feeling inspired by your the fall colors and adding chickpeas to my shopping list.
Great, good.
We have a few different questions. I'll start with, could you first repeat the temperature and length of time that you cooked the chickpeas in the oven?
Yeah, so they were on 400 and I cooked them for 25 minutes. It says that the recipe calls for 25 to 28 minutes. I find the 25 minutes is enough.
Perfect. And I will also add that Ayana's recipes are in the program, the conference program seen online. So you can look those up too for those watching. Another question we have is with regards to tofu and soy products.
Yeah.
Specifically, someone's asking about other soy products other than tofu, like miso, soy sauce,
Yeah.
tempeh. Do those also follow the same guidance in terms of being able to eat them if you have hormone receptor positive
Yeah,
cancer?
great question. So, yes, I would recommend to choose mostly whole soy products. Okay, so that would be tofu, tempeh, soybeans, edamame, right? Or soy milk too is considered a whole soy product rather than the additives in processed foods. That I would not count.
Okay. And then another question is, I think you sort of answered this, but what are your thoughts on fermented soy products?
Oh, I think so too. Yes, great. Great way to add more probiotics too into your diet.
Okay,
And fermented, I mean, tempeh is fermented too, I believe. So it's great.
great. Then some questions on turmeric. Do you have
Mhm.
information on how much one should eat daily? And also like the best source of it. Is it better to have it powdered or tablets or, as like dietary supplement type tablets?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say the more the better, right? But you want to try, if you're using it in food, right? If you're eating it through food, probably trying to get to a teaspoon a day is good. Some of the research is using, some of the research around it, with breast cancer or other cancers, it has used tablets in pretty high doses that have shown some benefit as well. So if you're using fresh, between the turmeric root, which kind of looks like ginger root if you have ever seen it in the store, but it's orange. So the fresh root, a teaspoon of the fresh root is about a teaspoon of dried turmeric is about equal to a tablespoon of the root. Okay, so either a teaspoon, you're using a teaspoon of dried or a tablespoon of the root. If you're not letting it sit too long, so more than 6 months on your shelf, it keeps its freshness and you can use it. Use the dried. That's easier. You don't have to buy the fresh. So both of them would be equal. As long as you don't let it sit for too long on your shelf or have it on hot. Great tip that some people would recommend to do that I've heard before is to actually mix it up with some either olive oil, coconut oil, a little bit. Put that teaspoon, leave it by your stove, and every time you're cooking something, throw some in. So you're adding it in all the time. Turmeric itself, I find to not have too much flavor. It's sort of maybe an earthy flavor to it. So it can be thrown into veggies. It can be thrown, make a yellow rice. There's a lot of way to add it in. If you do want to buy it in tablet form, I believe the research have shown 450 milligrams 3 times a day. It's a lot of tablets. So I don't know. That's what they looked at when they researched turmeric. It would be a curcumin, not the measurement. Problem with the tablets, they don't always, they show an amount that may not be accurate. There isn't an FDA regulation that actually tests those products. Okay, so some of them use independent laboratories. You want to make sure that it shows that they actually test the product. So NFS is one of them. should have that label on the supplement that you're buying. If you're buying supplement, they're not all created equal.
Sure.
Which is
Sure.
part of the
Being
different
aware.
types of supplements. Yeah, so really be aware that you may not be getting what it says on the label, which is, that's a tough one.
Sure. And just to round out the turmeric questions, do you ever use any spices kind of adjuvantly to enhance turmeric flavor more? Like someone specifically asked about white pepper.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to say that. You always want to add black pepper, actually. So the pepperine in the black pepper, that's the compound, that's going to enhance the absorption of the turmeric, of the curcumins, which is the compound in turmeric that we want, by about 1,000 times. So makes it a lot more bioavailable, and actually adding some fat in there also will make it more absorbable. So that's it. So you always want to add black pepper when you're using turmeric.
Great. And then one viewer's pointing out that they've heard of turmeric as having liver issues or issues with the body sometimes. And so just being aware that could also, do you have any thoughts on
causing liver issues?
Your turmeric consumption.
They heard of turmeric causing liver issues? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like raising liver enzymes.
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
That research.
Okay.
But I mean, again, when it takes, that's the one thing. It could be from contamination in the product as well.
Right. Sure. So, yeah, back to being aware of what the supplement.
Yeah.
The source of the supplement. Sure.
Yeah.
Another.
Consult, like if you haven't a chance to see, a lot of the cancer centers have dietitians there, right? Great to check in with your dietitian before you're going to take any supplements, especially during your treatment time, but also after. Just run it through them. They can review them with you. They can look at any interactions with any medications. They can recommend specific brands for you that they know that have been found safe and have been tested.
Great advice. Another question, when you mentioned having oil at your stove side, what, in your opinion, what kind of oil is the healthiest for cooking?
So I think the extra virgin olive oil is the best. You can use it up to, when you actually look at the more recent research, I read some research from like 2018, more recent research around oils and cooking that have been tested to see what happens to them if they oxidize with higher heat. Actually, extra virgin olive oil held up really great after 350. No problem, even for, I don't have a problem using it at 400 as well. Personally, I don't think. They think that some of the antioxidants that are in the oil, usually other vegetable oils will have vitamin E added to it, tocopherols. That is an antioxidant, protects it from the oxidation. That's why they add it. And naturally, extra virgin olive oil has some antioxidants. They think that one of the reasons it's protected from the heat, it's those antioxidants help protect it. So it's really interesting. The other, if I fry something up, in the event that I fry something up, like I fry up latkes in Hanukkah, right? I'm Jewish. I'm going to use avocado oil. That's my preferred one. In terms of flavor too, doesn't add a lot of aftertaste. I find that canola oil has like this aftertaste when I use it. And it is a bit more heat sensitive, actually.
Great. So extra virgin and avocado oil to keep in mind. Great. I do have a couple more questions. When you think about making a main dish or serving a main dish, I know you mentioned different types of pasta or using spaghetti squash. Do you ever consider wheat-based like sources of, I guess, other than pasta, I think is the question, to add to a main dish?
Yeah, like what, for example? Sorry.
Yeah, I guess maybe this was,
bread?
Maybe this does cover like sources of pasta, but do you find yourself using wheat-based pasta as opposed to
Absolutely. I have 2 little kids. They like their wheat-based pasta. We use that. Yeah, I mean, we want to try to use whole wheat as much as possible. It's going to have the added fiber in it,
Mhm.
which gives you more benefit. It also is not stripped away from some of the minerals that are in the wheat plant, which when you process them down, you only have the starch left. So, you know, you want to try to limit the amount of the only starch that you're having, but I have something that has an added benefit to it. But yeah, absolutely. We use
Yeah,
wheat
I
plastic.
think the question was getting at, like you just shared, kind of your thoughts on gluten, and I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of gluten
Oh,
sensitivity products and or gluten intolerance. So
well,
just
if there is a gluten issue, of course, obviously don't have wheat, right? So, you know, if you have something like a celiac disease, or if you
sure.
notice that you get bloated and uncomfortable when you're eating a lot of gluten, certainly take it out of your diet. Now, the research around that being harmful is really only for those instances. So otherwise, it's not a problem to eat gluten.
Great. Great. And then the last question I'll ask is someone taking note of your kitchen and wondering if you had any tips for cooking on an electric versus gas stove. Does your technique change, or do you have any recommendations for specific things to do differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you just with the with the gas stove, you have to give it a minute to heat up, right? And then the electric, you have a little actually with the newer one, you have pretty good control over the temperature that you have it on. It depends on which ones you have, right? But I would say just make sure you keep it. I like to just keep my things on my end up on medium heat and then lower it down. But I think that the new electric stoves, I don't use a lot of. I haven't used an electric stoves a lot in my life. Only when I was a guest in somebody else's house or in an
Yeah.
Airbnb. So I don't have as much experience, but I think if you're when you're used to using a certain stove, you kind of get a sense of the temperature changes when you lower the heat, how long it takes, this kind of stuff. I don't have necessarily, I think you just have to know your stove, and then
Yeah.
yeah,
Know
the
your
food
stove
will
and
be
temperatures. Sure.
fine.
Well, thank you again, Ayana, for answering questions and for your great
Yeah,
presentation.
you're
We're
welcome.
giving you a virtual round of applause. And again, I want to repeat that Ayana's recipes are on the conference program available on the landing page website. And I encourage everyone, this is a great lead up to our lunch hour. So have a bite to eat, have a stretch. We have the virtual resource fair that's going on. And then our next breakout sessions will start at 12:35. So
Great.
thank you,
Those
everyone.
recipes are delicious.